Welcome to Camp Okayest, powered by X2 Power. Of course, X2 Power available at your locals batteries plus stores where you go to purchase those sorts of things. You go and check them out. By the way, I am host Sean Ritter. Thanks so much for popping in today. Of course, don't forget to follow us on socials at Camp Okayest. I sported the cup right away this morning. Backcountry hunters and anglers. Just this evening. I don't know why I said this morning. Literally, we are doing this in the evening. My brain is completely just obliterated, apparently. But we are joined this week by Alec Bekkers, who's the vice chair of the Wisconsin Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. And, this is an organization that I really wanted to talk about and get involved a lot on this show. And I know I'd met both you, Alex. I know I met Aaron, who's the chapter coordinator. And then I was Joe Steffen, who's the chair of the Wisconsin chapter at the Icebreaker event that we had, which was the big Midwestern ice fishing thing that turned out to be not an ice fishing tournament like it was supposed to be because Mother Nature decided to say, hey, guess what? We're not going to go to the ice because it's going to be super, super warm as we get going into what was supposed to be winter. So thanks for hopping on the show here this week, or coming to camp, I should say.
Of course. Thank you for having me. Always happy to come support the Okayest Hunter Network.
Yeah, absolutely. And all great things. I know, of course, we talk about the things you guys do for supporting as well. You can't forget about an event that you guys are getting involved with this year for the 3rd annual Foam Fest, which is taking place August 31st. That's the Horicon Marsh Archers, just outside of Horicon. Kind of been talking about every week. It's a great event to come out and not only just shoot a great fee course, right? And, help raise money essentially for, backcountry hunters and anglers and all the great stuff you guys do, which we'll get into more of that as we get going throughout the show here. But also to test out new stuff. If you've ever been interested in mobile setups, in saddle hunting, anything like that, everybody, I know of the entire Okayest Hunter crew is going to be there. My plan is still to be there. I'm going to bring all of my stuff with as well. So you can actually kind of test, mobile setups, whether it's saddle, whether it's small mobile stand, you can actually shoot from them. So it's a great event to get you tuned up for bow season and just kind of check out some stuff before, because let's be real, anytime you're buying something like that, it's a lot of money. It's an investment. If you're going to go to get into saddle hunting or whatever it is, and you hate to spend money and then be like, oh, I hate this, and they got to try and get rid of it. Essentially, resale and Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist can kind of be a pain in the tail to resell things. So try it out before you buy it. That's the best way to put it. So we're all going to be out there with some stuff ready to try out and buy. I know Bears can a couple of bows that we're actually going to give away at the event. So go check it out again. Horicon Marsh Archers for Foam Fest. All the info is up at okayesthunter.com. So main reason I want to get you on, Alec, is because I feel like Backcountry Hunters and Anglers is an organization that a lot of people don't know about. You've always, I feel, getting hit up for requests to go to events or make donations to all these major conservation organizations, Ducks Unlimited, Bass Angler Sportsman Society, National Wild Turkey Federation, now, what is it, Pheasants Forever, Trout Unlimited. There's all these different organizations that are always asking you to help out, and they talk about conservation. But I feel really, because of my connections in understanding what Backcountry Hunters and Anglers is, that's kind of the one organization that, to me, umbrellas everything and does, I even think, a little bit more than those individual specialized organizations. Wouldn't you agree, Alec?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, from the foundations of Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, or BHA for short, as we call it, it was a group of guys that were friends sitting around a campfire at hunting camp that were talking about their love for public lands and resources. And that's how Backcountry Hunters and Anglers came to be. I mean, we are primarily focused on public access to public lands and waters all across the country, and that's not species dependent. Our public lands don't just hold deer, they don't just hold turkeys, right? There's everything, and there's habitat for everything that we need to care about as the public, and that's where we as an organization come in across the country. And then from my purview here, just in the state of Wisconsin.
Yeah, and it's not just hunting that we're looking at. This is hiking, this is camping, this is any place that you would utilize a public space and public lands. And, as time has gone on, everything's becoming so privatized. And I've talked about this, I believe Greg Tubbs and I, Greg from Okayest Fisher, Okayest Hunter, we did a show a while back, and we were talking about kind of the pay-to-play thing. And it feels like sometimes in the United States, we're slowly edging towards that pay-to-play system that's real familiar with people in Europe, where you got to belong to a club in order to, in order to hunt. Like, I know there's places in Europe where you literally have to be part of a hunt club. They provide all of the weapons, so you don't even own your own guns or bows or anything like that. It's all part of the hunt club, and you got to be a part of the club and pay your dues. And then that's how you can have access to land to hunt. And it's so regulated and it's so pay to play. We've never been built upon that in the principles in the United States. And I hate to see it keep going that way. And that's why I love what you guys do, because I feel like Backcountry Hunters and Anglers is that one organization that really is out there, always making sure to look out for all of us and being able to utilize natural resources.
Absolutely. And that's our entire ethos, is the democratization of our resources. Based on our North American model of wildlife conservation, these resources are owned by the public and held in trust by the government. The government doesn't own them. The government doesn't own the land or the wildlife. We do. And the government helps manage them. And we want to be that voice for the public to make their voices heard. And we also try to accomplish that through being a very volunteer led organization. I myself am a volunteer. I've got a day job, and trust me, that keeps me busy enough. We have a very light, paid staff to keep the lights on with the organization, but we've got 30,000 members across the country, and they're all very involved. They're the ones that are boots on the ground, taking down miles of fences, helping improve habitat, going to congressional hearings, state or federal, and making our voices heard. We're not hiring an army of consultants or attorneys to go fight our battles for us. BHA, we are the ones doing it. And that's the democratization of our resources that I think really maintains true throughout the life of BHA.
And I think there's definitely a culture amongst everyone with BHA. And so, like, backstory in my connection with BHA, I actually interviewed for the digital media person back in, was it 2022? Like, of national BHA. I was like in the interview process for that position, and sat down and was sitting with, like, the high ups in the organization. And I can tell from meeting and talking with everybody holds those same values right down to your state and local level. And that's what I love about the organization, is it's not like the person in the ivory tower who just like, oh, we come with these ideas and we tell all our local chapters this is what they have to do. No, it's like everybody has the same mission, the same thought, and it's a really, really great organization. And you mentioned about fighting for public lands and that the government doesn't own these lands and stuff. We're in an election year. Can't avoid it necessarily. You hear a lot about conservation, and lately in the news, you may have heard things, with like issues with public land and trying to, issue out and let public land be used for X, Y, and Z. And I mean, that's exactly what you guys do, right? Like, you guys are the ones that are like looking at those things and actually talking to people and explaining why it's so important to continue keeping those public lands.
Yeah, great example of that here in Wisconsin is and it may not necessarily be public land, but there's a solar farm that wants to do some development in the central part of the state, and it is the prime and only habitat left for the greater prairie chicken in the state of Wisconsin. And we're starting to get involved with that, along with a number of other conservation minded organizations, to show our opposition for that. Like, on the surface level, you'd think from an environmental standpoint, like, oh, solar, great for the environment, no more powered cars, less emissions in the environment, great for the environment. But where do the prairie chickens go? Have you ever seen a solar farm? It's thousands of acres of nothing but solar panels. And those are very expensive solar panels that the producers want to protect. So they put a big old fence around them. So where does the wildlife go? Well, now you've just taken thousands of acres of prime habitat out of the wildlife accessibility. So this initially good idea to create renewable energy sources is actually going to have a detrimental effect to our wildlife and our habitat, even on a macro scale. And, that's just one example, very current here in Wisconsin. This is happening all across the country. And I think it's something we're going to keep running into and keep being involved with from a BHA perspective, especially when it comes to public land. You
Mhm.
know, we need to evaluate these equations on a holistic perspective, not just does selling these public lands or developing these public lands for whatever use it may be have a positive or negative effect to the entire ecosystem that relies on these public lands.
Sometimes what's good for the goose is not necessarily good for the gander.
Absolutely. I mean, my personal feelings on solar farms is I want to see a solar panel on every rooftop above every parking lot across the entire country before 1 inch of public land is developed for solar farms. I mean,
That just
there's
makes more sense too. I totally agree with you,
yeah,
Alec. That just makes a lot more sense to me. Your roof of your house, what does it do? It covers your house from the elements. Why not put a solar
mhm.
panel on that to power and protect from the elements versus just building these giant panels out in the middle of nowhere, like you said, putting up big fences. And yeah, I'm just glad that you guys are an organization that's out there to fight for this because you don't hear, any of the other major, we'll call it conservation organizations talking about stuff like this. And I'm not saying any of those organizations or that you shouldn't support them or this or that. I've just, just straight in the line, you don't hear that from them. You hear that from backcountry hunters and anglers, and I love that. Access is something that's really important to me, and especially being this show, being camp, as in just everything encompassing in the outdoors. You don't have fun in the outdoors as a family or as a person without the access. I grew up with a whole bunch of land up in northern Marinette County. As a kid, going up there all the time. I pretty much said like I grew up in the woods of Marinette County, running around like that's part of what instilled my love of the outdoors. And as my grandparents passed away, we ended up selling off the property, and so like there isn't anymore. So now, if I want to hunt or anything, I'm I'm a public landowner, as everyone so proudly likes to say. And so having gone from having private access to then going to public and seeing the differences, it's made me so much more of a person to protect and care about public lands to the point like when I'm out bow hunting, like I keep literally a plastic bag in my backpack, and on the way out or whatever, I find trash I'm picking up on the way out. Like it's just the one easy thing that I can do myself to help keep it clean and help, keep things in order. And I feel like if everyone just did a little bit, it would make things better. And I love to see people out using it, even if they're not hunting. I love to encounter people just like walking their dogs and stuff like that. I think it's great to see people being outside instead of, on a screen necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, I just had a conversation at my buddy's wedding this past weekend with a guy who may not necessarily support hunting or fishing, but ginormous advocate for public lands because he's really into camping, specifically in like VW vans that he renovates,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
just tears around BLM land in Utah going camping. But that's something exactly to your point that everybody recreates on these lands. I mean, skiing, hiking, bird watching. It's not just about hunting. We are a very important part of the conservation model, but we're not the only ones that access these lands and utilize these lands. And it's not just for us. It's not just for my hunt. It's for everybody else that has a right to use these lands and waters.
Yeah, and when it comes to access, I always think about, and I wanted to share this story, but I figured you'd be the best person to speak for it. It was actually a conversation Aaron and I were having at the Icebreaker event and talking about just access alone in stream access. People may not know this, but typically law is when it comes to water, like especially federal navigable waterways. If your feet are wet, you're safe. Like you're legal. You can be walking through a stream that's a federal navigable waterway, and both sides of the shore are private land. You are completely legal. If your feet are wet, you're in the water. That's not true everywhere. There's certain places where that's like really the battle where there's these streams and things that people are recreating to trout fish or even just like walking through where people basically claim or do own based on how laws are the stream bed based on levels of water. Like I'm speaking true. Like I'm not like taking that out of context. Am I, Alec?
No, I mean, just in the state of Wisconsin, I think the law is specifically the normal high water mark is your right of access or easement, so to speak, to go on those public waterways. So you could, in a low water situation, be walking on dry ground below the high water mark, the normal high water mark, and be totally legal. But yeah, even in Illinois, like you don't have to go very far to find different stream access laws. Illinois has got a bunch of weird classifications, and there's a very small amount of navigable waterways that you can access publicly. And you go out west, and different states like Colorado, New Mexico have different classifications, like river by river. I think Colorado, I want to say, is the one where you can float down the river, but if you put your feet on the ground, even underneath the water, then you can get in trouble. So there's just this weird plethora of different rules and regulations around stream access, and we're very very lucky to have what we have in Wisconsin, on top of an amazing fishery, regardless of what species you want to target in Wisconsin. We've got it all. So very lucky to be in Wisconsin, but there's a lot of work to be done, in some of these western states on water access. That's for sure.
Absolutely. Well, let's get a little bit about you, Alec. Your outdoor background, like where you come from, how'd you get involved in the outdoors, and how did it eventually, lead you into backcountry hunter and anglers?
Yeah, I didn't get into hunting until after college. I had never shot a gun until after college. I first got into guns and got into like clay shooting. And some of my coworkers were like, "Oh, if you think clay shooting's fun, you should come hunting." And one of my buddies took me out pheasant hunting, and the downward spiral just kind of took off from there. Um, I ended up I was a student of a learn to hunt program myself, that was it National Wild Turkey Federation and Pheasants Forever had put on, a number of years ago. And that, just increased my fire. And I just went out trying to figure everything else out on my own. And I don't come from a hunting family. My family thinks I'm crazy for doing all of this stuff. And I don't have private land. So I am exclusively a public land hunter. And after, hunting public land for a few years and understanding how great it is that, I was living downtown Milwaukee and I could drive 45 minutes and be in this amazing recreation area, I was like, hey, this is pretty cool stuff. I should try to get a little bit more involved in that. And came across BHA through, various podcasts, TV shows, that kind of thing, and started volunteering, and here I am.
It's a crazy long but short story. Now, you talked about the Learn to Hunt program. Do you guys do any, like, on your own BHA put together Learn to Hunt programs? Because I think that's a really great way, you being the perfect example, to get people involved in the outdoors and a chance to see what hunting's all about. Even if you don't ever become a hunter, a really great thing that people can have access to just learn more about it.
Yeah, absolutely. We do a number of learn to hunt programs around the state, all over the course of the year. So Tony Cordero is another great supporter of the Okayest Hunter Network. He's our R3 coordinator for the state of Wisconsin. And he kind of coordinates all of our different learn to hunt events that we will do either solo as BHA or in partnership with like Pheasants Forever, National Deer Association. There's a number of partners involved in the Learn to Hunt space now. And it's all kind of under the umbrella of the DNR. So the one thing I will specify with the Learn to Hunt programs is like, we're not sitting outside of a Whole Foods going like, hey, you need to come hunting with me. like which I think is what the Matt Ranella like Hunt Quietly perspective on R3 is, that we're like convincing people to come hunting and ruin their hunts on public land. Like, no, these are people that have expressed interest to the DNR, have taken hunter safety, and don't have any other means to learn how to go out and navigate this stuff for themselves. So they sign up through the DNR to any one of our classes, whether it's learn to hunt turkey. Tony just did one with bears, learn to bear hunt with hounds. Every fall, we do learn to hunt deer with vertical bow, crossbow, and gun. Learn to hunt pheasant, and we're probably going to start sprinkling in some like different small game ones as well, on top of learn to fish. So anything and everything, we try to put it on, and we try to focus on how to hunt for that species on public land. We try to give people the tools, like, hey, you're going to be hunting public land. Like, we're not going to teach you how to be a big buck killer, but we're going to teach you how to navigate public land so that you're not going to get frustrated and quit, and you're going to enjoy your experience a little bit more and hopefully be successful a little bit sooner. And that's true whether it's deer, pheasant, turkey, whatever. But that's the kind of spin that we put on it. Is public land's a little bit different than, you know, sitting in your tree stand that grandpa sat in for 30 years before you. We got to teach you how to navigate public land, and our hope is that we're also teaching people the appreciation right off the bat, so that they're going into this world understanding the appreciation of not just public lands, but wildlife, the resources that we all have access to. So, yeah, great programs. If you guys have any questions on it, Tony Cordero is kind of our go-to guy. But I also put them on and host these events myself personally. So it's a lot of fun.
I got to get involved in some of those learn to fish programs. I think that'd be really fun to get involved in and stuff with my obviously fishing background and see in the background everything that goes on with that. Yeah, the whole
please do, because I need to learn how to fish.
All right. Well, you want to learn to fish from a kayak? I can definitely be your person for that, because that's mainly my game. I spent so much time.
I got one collecting dust. It's collecting dust. Let's go do it.
What kind of kayak is this, Alec?
I got an Old Town. What is it? The Solo Sportsman, the kind of kayak canoe hybrid. Yeah.
Perfect. Good to go. As long as you don't say a sun dolphin, we're good to go. Those things are, for those things is death traps. I don't recommend fishing out of them. You can, but I don't recommend it. I forget, it was something popped in my head just talking there, and it completely like left my brain. Oh, I hate when that happens, right? Like, you're like, oh, I had something. Ethics. That's what popped in my head. You talk about people not getting frustrated in public land and knowing how it's different. I will say, being a public land person, there's something that I have encountered a lot, and I've tried to educate others that I've encountered with said situation. And that is the fact of just general ethics in encountering people in the woods, and the fact that you can't leave deer stands in the state of Wisconsin anyway. Everything has to be like brought in and brought out that night. You can't, you can bring something in the morning and come back in the evening, but you can't just like leave it there all the time. I cannot tell you how many times in public land I've seen that, where there's like a climber stand like locked up to the bottom of a tree, and a guy just comes walking in and climbs up the tree, or stands that are just put up and left in public land. And some of them look like they've been there for years, and it's like, it's the ethics of things. You probably should take that down, because by having it there, if it's a person like me that's walking and doing mobile hunting, I don't want to set up in that area, because I immediately have the thought someone has the chance to come walk in to go to that, and is going to completely blow up and ruin what I have going on. I'm always the person that, like, I am very slow and cautious going into things. I'm also usually only an early morning hunter, so a flashlight, you can tell me where you are, I'm going to see you, whatever. It's not like during daylight where sometimes you can camouflage in. But if I am out like, walking around in daylight and I catch a glimpse or see or know someone's in the area, I'm like going to immediately try and avoid it and try and not wreck their hunt, essentially. And I wish that more of education about that aspect of public lands would take place, because I think it is that. I think there's that, people are so used to the private land, went to grandpa's deer stand forever and just treating this place that's legal to hunt like it would be your normal land, not realizing that you have to really almost look out for others. I feel personally, in a way, more than yourself when recreating and using those spaces.
Yeah, I mean, we try to do all of our learn to hunt programs during regular seasons. Uh, we are able to get some like exceptions that from the DNR that like we can have adults with a waiver hunting with a gun during youth season. And the reason we do that is because I want to teach you this skill of gun hunting for deer, and I want you to do it on public land when there's other people hunting. I mean, I still bow hunt through youth season. As annoying as it is to have to wear blaze orange during archery season, I still do it.
Yep.
Um, so that they're getting that exposure to there's going to be other people hunting. You're going to run into other people. Think about how you need to approach those situations to not ruin their hunt, but also how to use their presence to your advantage. You know, whether they're
Hmm.
pheasant hunters, well, I guess not during youth season, but
Early on in bow
small
season,
game
you get the
hunters.
squirrel hunters. Yeah, exactly.
Right. Like, how do you use those other people to your advantage to be more successful is a huge part of it. Uh, and at the same time, I'm also not going to be hosting a learn to hunt with gun event outside of a normal gun hunting season because I don't want to ruin other people's hunts. Like, yes, it would be perfectly legal for the DNR, you know, under DNR's position to give us the ability to gun hunt on public land in, you know, in a random weekend in September, but I'm not going to do that.
Hmm.
And we explain to the students why we're doing it this weekend, why we're allowed to do it, and why we're choosing this weekend to expose them to this side of deer hunting, so that they can have that toolkit available to them when November rolls around and they're ready for 9 day.
Yeah.
But 100% to your point that the ethics is kind of that foundation that I want every one of these students, Tony wants every one of these students to depart with is I really don't care if you kill a deer, kill a pheasant, kill a turkey, whatever. I want you to come away from this weekend with the foundation of being a good person to have hunting on public land. I don't want you to be the old guy that is an asshole to everyone else on public land and says, this is where I've hunted for 30 years and this is my
Yeah.
spot. Like, don't be that person. Have the appreciation and the respect for others so that at the very least, the additional people that we're throwing out there onto public land are not going to be assholes about it.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think encountering things like that can ruin it for others. I mean, here's a prime example story of something happened to me one morning. I'm the person, and so you're talking about hunting. I don't gun hunt at all. I only bow hunt, and I'm just like you, Alec. I'm adult onset. I grew up fishing, and then when I was like 16, I really got into waterfowl hunting, and I was like huge duck hunter. Talked about a ton on the show. Like we were hunting diver ducks. I bow season deer hunting. It just got in the way of duck hunting. I'm not gonna be a deer waiter. I'm gonna duck hunt. It's always the motto that I used to say. And then as I got older now, in the last couple of years, I've really gotten into bow hunting, and I absolutely love it. I love the solitude and just being that I moved from where I grew up, where I was. Waterfalling opportunities are not the same where I am versus where I was. Whereas it's easier for me to find bow hunting opportunities, and so I fell right into that, and I love it. I'm out in the woods one day, and I'm the person that, like I said earlier, I get up and I usually do early morning hunts. I am in my stand. I am set up in the tree an hour before shooting light. 'Cause I'm the person want to get in. I want to get to my spot. I want to get set up. And there's I always feel different theories on how you enter the woods. There's the no lights, silent, walking in socks, that are just trying to be super silent. I'm the person where I don't care. Like I'm not like crunching around trying to make a ton of noise. Like I'm trying to, and I'm not worried about a headlamp or anything like that because I'm out there that early. I'd rather spook something an hour and a half before shooting light than a half hour before shooting light. Rather spook something like basically my headlamp is only to get to the tree. Once I get to my tree, I have my first stick on, I'm up and everything's off. It's pure darkness from there. the rest of the setup. Like you have no clue. So I'm up in the tree, and it's like 10 minutes before shooting light. And I know that there's a bunch of does up in like some doe bang up toward the top of this ridge, and I'm kind of down in like the valley, and this is like a real big spot where there's a lot of runs and a lot of deer communicate and run through this area. And I start hearing like crunch, crunch, crash, and I'm like, why are those deer taking off right now? Like they were like full tilt running, and they took off, didn't go past them in a different direction, and the next thing you know, I see a headlamp just doing that. This guy comes walking down the ridge. I think he broke every branch on the way down, just made so much noise. And I'm sitting up there, and he's like walking right directly towards me. And so I take like my flashlight, and I like that little flashlight, I kind of click on, point at him, and turn it off. And it doesn't like divert nothing. I kind of like click, 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 and kind of blink my light at him. Still nothing. To the point I literally walked directly below me. And I took my light at that point, and I shined along with him as he walked directly below me. And then found his tree stand, which was, locked at the bottom of the tree. And I couldn't figure out what he was doing at first. It looked, I used the reference, it looked like a squirrel's were holding a rave, because that headlamp was just spinning circles in the woods. There was everywhere, things going everywhere. And now it's shooting light. Still, there's all this crackling around. It gets even lighter, and I pull out my rangefinder, and I can see the guy. I got 62 yards. Like, so I just hung out, and I just sat there. Like, I kind of knew it was over, but I just sat there of like, well, who knows? Maybe he'll leave early. If he obviously came in late, he's probably gonna leave early, and I'll hang around after him. It's not a big deal. On the way out, he walked directly above me again, and almost like, I don't know if he's trying to ignore my presence or truly didn't see, to the point where like I finally go, "Excuse me." I'm like, "Do you happen to see me this morning when you came down, sir? Like, you walked directly below me." "Oh, no, didn't know you were there." Which led my first thought, if you didn't notice that, probably I have questions about hunting and trying to correctly know the rules of, know your target and what's beyond and all the other things you learn in hunter safety. But like a situation like that I encountered, and I just took it for what it is. I had a, slight conversation with the guys. Hey, I just want to give you a heads up, I was here. First off, like it's illegal to leave stand on public lands in the state of Wisconsin. Just I'd hate to see something happen or someone take it. So I just want to let you know, like I was super nice about it. And all he said was, well, I'm older and it takes a lot for me to walk that in and out. And I said, I understand, sir, but I have to do it every day as well. And this is our public land. We both are in this together. We both have to do the same things. And they just walked off. And I don't know what effect that had on the gentleman, but I just always think back to the situation, and I'm like, another person that could have been like the biggest turnoff, or could have led to an altercation essentially. And then it's like a lose-lose for everybody involved. And that's why I love those, learn to hunt. I know that we kind of went off the rails. It's what we do on the show. But teach people and have them in the woods during these seasons, I think it's great, because you have the chance to have those encounters and to learn from it in the moment, essentially, with others. So I applaud you guys for doing that in season. I think it's a really great thing.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that Doug Duran always says, and I know he's kind of talking about private land and like habitat management when he says this, but it's not ours, it's just our turn.
I love that slogan.
I think that applies to public land too. Like, yes, I am a public land owner, but I'm not the owner, right? It's not mine. It's all of ours. And I'm just taking my turn using it. And I think that mindset is important for people to understand. Like, this is not my land to leave my tree stand on, to hang my surveyor's tape or put my cat's eyes on these trees. Like, I'm using this space just as everyone else is. So what right do I have to make it more mine than anyone else's?
Yeah, I encounter that a lot in public land too, is the tape on trees. I mean, the pins, but more so the tape, leaving the lines of tape and stuff. And I mean, that's basically just, it's plastic that you're throwing out in the woods. And I'm that person that as I walk by, I mentioned the garbage bag, I'll grab that and I'll just pull it off. And it's not me trying to be like mean, like, oh, I'm trying to like blow off and not let you. No, I just like, it's not supposed to be here, and I want to clean it up because maybe you did leave it here last season or 2 seasons ago, and it's just there. So I'm just here to clean it up,
I do it all the time, man. my buddy Quinn makes fun of me for it all the time, but I am absolutely that asshole to tear down the surveyor's tape. Unless it's like a really bad spot, then I'm like, I'll let you only be able to find this spot. That's fine.
What's like the number one thing as far while we're talking about like finding trash and finding things in the woods? What's the number one thing that you come across and find like while you're out navigating land?
I found a bag of weed once. That was pretty fun.
Wow.
Yeah. I like
Are
I
you
was just doing my thing, like picking up trash like normal, just stuffing them into my pockets, and I grabbed this baggie. I was like, someone like left their lunch bag out here. I pull it up, and it was like an eighth of weed. And I was like,
are you
oh,
sure it
someone's
wasn't
gonna be
oregano?
real. Oh, the oregano is not budded
like,
like this was.
did,
Yeah. I was like, man,
did you
someone's
test
gonna
it?
be real sad. It was moldy, so
Oh God.
I
Yeah.
I like gave it back to complete the nitrogen cycles of the
Perfect.
environment and whatnot. But
Yeah.
that I don't find regularly. That one that just popped in my head. Shotgun shells are the ones that I find everywhere, no matter what. Like I put a camera up last week and I found a bunch of 410 shells. I was like, unless you're squirrel hunting, like I don't know what you're using 410s for, like half a mile back into an oak flat, but
Squirrels,
shotgun shells
rabbits.
are the ones. Yeah, the shotgun shells are the ones that I'm probably guilty of it too. I do my best to look for my shotgun shells and to pick them up after I'm done, but sometimes, like especially with the semi-auto like gas gun, that shell's blowing 10, 15 yards away. But that's the one thing that I want to like give the challenge to ammo companies. Like we need to figure out something a little bit more biodegradable
Yeah.
and not have it be 3 times the price. But uh, I don't know. I did pick up. I purchased one of these. I think Mojo makes it. It's like a collapsible stick with a magnet on the end
Okay.
that when you're duck hunting, you can just like sweep it around in the water and it'll pick up all your shotgun shells.
Oh wow,
Because
that's amazing. Yeah. That sounds like something
I
Mojo
think,
would make.
yeah, the primer I think has enough ferrous metal in it to pick up with a magnet. But that, I mean, I bring that duck hunting with me every time. And even if I'm going to be just screwing around, you know, shooting the shit in national forest or whatever, like I'll
Yeah.
bring that to pick up my shotgun shells. But that's the one thing that I think everybody has seen shotgun shells. It's kind of good to like know where other people have been shooting off shells, but it still burns in the back of my mind. Like, I wish we weren't leaving all this trash on public land.
Yeah, I mean, a transfer from like public to private land, that was one of the biggest things, in my waterfowling days, especially when we do like field goose hunting or even field duck hunting, was, talking with farmers about that and like being very of like, listen, like we're clean, we clean up everything and like legit, we were that like we're out looking for our wads, out near our decoys. It's like that's one thing I would want to be very conscious of. And it's easy when you're layout blind, like you're shooting all of your shells are usually within the same radius, so it's little easier to find. We also enjoyed the we'd clean up your shells and throw them all in your blind, and then after 2 or 3 weeks, you get to unzip the bottom of the blind and it just dump cases upon cases of empty shells out, which is always the kind of fun thing to do. We were making sure to keep it clean and not leave all that stuff laying around in farmers' fields. Right, that is the number one thing that I found there in fields. Walking the woods in public lands, though, maybe just some of the public lands I've been on, it's aluminum cans. I can't tell you how many aluminum cans I find. And the biggest one that gets me is when I find beer cans. Like, you do you, whatever, but it's like, you got a beer can all the way back here for. We're talking like 2
I
miles back from like you take a couple bush lattes with you up into the tree stand, you get you through the day, and then pack them out with you. Like, you don't have to drop them right there. Like, I just don't understand the aluminum can thing all over the place. I'm not cracking a can into the woods. It's so loud.
I definitely don't understand it either. The one thing I will say on the aluminum cans that I've found recently, I can tell are old because it's like Miller Lite cans before they went back to the retro design.
Oh, yeah,
So
okay,
like the
yep.
like yeah, like the like
When they had
late
that, like,
2000s
that yeah, the,
bluish.
like, blue and
Yeah.
gold thing before they went back to the OG white and blue. Yeah, okay.
Right. So I have found a good bit of cans, but they are kind of old. But I think that just goes back to the point of like, hey, this trash doesn't just go away. Like it stays there for years and years and years. So we got to pick it up, man.
Well, and that's a perfect, like, round on the entire topic is that what we do today or leave today, the it's gonna affect tomorrow. Like, the choices and the things that happen today with access or anything with public lands will affect the future generations. And that's again why I really want to tout, BHA and make sure to give a bit more of that platform to explain and show people just the great things that BHA does. And, that to have land for our future generations is something that's very important to me because I never thought that I would need it necessarily until here I am, and anyone and everyone. And there's some freaking beautiful places that are all public land. And I have just like scratched the tip of the needle with some of it. I know there's so much more out there to explore and I intend to do it. That's as life goes on and I get older. That's my wife and I, the end game. We want to just travel, our life, living, traveling, remote work, all those things like that is, I think, ultimately the end game of things. And it's to be able to go and explore and see those cool places as long as they're still there and accessible.
Absolutely. And we're so lucky to have it. Like you go to Europe and it's a completely different model. There aren't publicly held lands. Recreation and access is a little bit different in Europe, depending on what you can or want to do. But we created, like the United States created the idea of public lands. I think Canada has something similar, not as specifically owned by the people, more owned by the government. But we're really unique in that sense that there is land in every state across the country that is ours to use as we choose. And that's not going to go away in my lifetime. And we're trying to make sure that it stays around for perpetuity because that land is going to be there for a lot longer than we are. So we should have the insurance that people can access that land for a lot longer than we'll be around.
And it's not ours, it's just our turn. What do you say, Alec, is like the number one thing, the number one problem that public lands face today as far as, the biggest threat, I should say, to public lands today?
I'm going to say funding because that can go a number of different directions. I'll give the example of Wisconsin that we have a lot of public lands in comparison to like Texas, right? We have a larger percentage of public land.
Well, Texas is an
Um,
entirely different country in itself. We can go down
right.
an entire episode just talking
Yeah.
about Texas and how they manage, but I digress.
Yeah, and we're not Nevada, Utah, whatever, with 70+% public land, but we have a lot of recreation opportunities in Wisconsin, and a lot of that is state controlled land. Um, Wisconsin is a great program called the Knowles Nelson Stewardship Program that is a funding mechanism to purchase public land and open it up for recreation. And I will add that one of the stipulations with Knowles Nelson purchasing purchase lands, it has to be open to hunting. It is required to be open to hunting. Um, Knowles Nelson has added a lot of public land to Wisconsin in the last few years. But we're running out of money. So we're not going to be able to expand state owned land without more money, without figuring out that funding source on a
Mm.
legislative basis. And similarly, the habitat that exists on what we already have in public land, there's only so many people, there's only so many biologists that work for the DNR. There's only so much money that the DNR and the state can spend on maintaining, improving these public habitats. and that's really where we run into the shortfalls. And I think we run the risk. I'm not saying this is happening yet, but I think we run the risk of the state facing these budgetary pressures on all sides, pointing to public lands and saying, this is where I think I can make back some of my money if I just spend a little bit less on habitat, spend a little bit less on maintaining these hunting opportunities on public lands. And I think we're going to start seeing that a little bit more. And that's something that kind of scares me, specifically in Wisconsin, is that shortfalls elsewhere in the government budget are going to impact the habitat on the lands that we recreate on.
And when it comes to the lands, I always think like out west is the biggest place where I hear about this. But do you know of anywhere in Wisconsin that we have public land that's landlocked? Because I
Yes.
think that that's definitely a big issue that we all face, is that there is pieces of land that are public, that are all of ours, that private land is completely landlocked it where we don't have access. And so these landowners essentially have like extra free land. Is there like a handful or one or something you can think of, like particularly in the state of Wisconsin that you know of?
There's a few thousand acres that is owned by some sort of public entity, whether it's county, state, or federal, that is inaccessible to the public uh, because it's landlocked by private land.
Mhm.
Uh, we, the Wisconsin chapter, are trying to work on that specifically as a project in Wisconsin to create access to those public parcels that are otherwise inaccessible to the public. The Arkansas chapter of BHA last year was able to do something like this, and that's where we got the idea from. Is they purchased 1 acre of land and donated it to the DNR so that hundreds or maybe thousands of acres were then accessible to the public. We want to do something similar. We're going through all of the like GIS data to try to figure out where are some specific parcels that we can target. I mean, I know right off the top of my head, there's 200 acres a county over from me that is more or less inaccessible to the public. And these exist all across the state, varying sizes from 40 acres to 300 acres. But there are thousands of acres across the state that we can specifically work towards creating access to because we own it as the people of Wisconsin, and we should have access to it. And we want to do that in ways that are beneficial for all parties involved. We don't want to steamroll any landowners and say, "Fuck your private land rights." We want to make it beneficial for everyone.
Yeah.
But that
Well, and so
is
like
absolutely something we want to look at.
that process, Alec, does it look like, and I'm going to kind of just paint the picture. You can tell me whether I'm completely off my rocker or this is true. It comes down to basically creating funding and having the funds to purchase land from a landowner. And then you're kind of just basically creating a trailhead and creating a trail that is the access point, the easement onto the property. Is that like a correct, so we all have the same picture painted? It's not like we're trying to buy an
Yeah,
entire chunk of someone's land and be like, oh, move your house, move your light. It's like we just want like a sliver, like create a trail through.
exactly. Exactly. And there's so many different mechanisms by which we can do that. I mean, there's easements that landowners can give for free. And you can establish that easement like as an official public easement. You can pay people for easements, whether it's through something like MFL, the managed forest lands, VPA, voluntary public access, or yeah, even purchasing 10 yards wide back to the back corner of the property. There's a number of different ways we can do that without having to pony up, the $10,000 an acre that we're currently seeing in land prices. That's keeping me away from my dream of hundreds of acres of a deer farm. But
So In your experience, Alec, do you think the biggest problem to that is funding to purchase or landowners not wanting the public that close to their property?
I honestly think it's more the second. More landowners' apprehension to allowing public access because of everything we've talked about, that there are assholes out there. And that's where I think we, not just like the organization of BHA, but like the group
People
of
that
people
recreate in
that
the outdoor
we,
space,
yeah, and like the people that we hang out with and the people that we recreate with, like on a person to person basis, we're the great example to come in and say, right, but how about I come out, once a month and I clean up any trash? How about I put up the signage to say this is where you can access it, and this is where private property is, and use ourselves as the example to say, like, look, we're not just Bubba coming out to shine deer and drink beer. We actually give a shit about this.
yeah.
And that, like, past just the organization on paper, like, that's one of the things that I love about this group of people that I'm involved with, is they're good people, and it's very obvious that they're good people, and that's why I want to use these good people to benefit everyone.
Yeah, I mean, I can absolutely see that, and that's why I had to bring that up because I feel that is the biggest apprehension is, and I say all the time, the biggest problem we have as outdoor recreators, I'm not talking hunters, fishermen, angler, whatever you want to label it, is a PR problem. And like sometimes we are our own damn worst nightmare because it's stuff like that where all it takes is one person throwing their beer cans and the shotgun shells or like just completely blatantly trespassing through someone's property when they've possibly like created this access point and then you abuse it. And that absolutely makes everybody look terrible. And then that allows progress for the whole because of one person, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. And if one person can make a difference in a negative way, I really believe and I hope 5, 10, 15 people that really care can make a difference in a positive way. And
There's
that's
actually a stat. There's actually a stat to that, Alec, and I can't remember what it is. What was the exact stat in that? I'm just for example, I'm going to say one negative voice is louder than 18 positive voices. Like I think somewhat close. There's like legitimate number of like one negative interaction, one negative thing holds more weight than X number of positives, and that's such a bummer, and that's why it's so important for all of us that recreate public lands. I feel to do our part, whether it's cleaning, it's just following the rules, not being an asshole, or volunteering our time and helping out organizations like BHA.
we'd appreciate any help we can get. And we do work days all the time. I think we've got one coming up in a couple weeks here, cleaning up Goose Lake Wildlife Area, doing some habitat improvement there. So we try to do one basically once a month, in different areas of the state. But you want to come get your hands dirty, we'd love to have you. Um,
Absolutely. Anyone else that
Frankly, I
wants
don't
to get
even.
in, yeah, anyone that wants to get involved and help out, or just join BHA, how would they go about getting involved in that, or more specifically, getting involved in a local chapter? Whether you're here in Wisconsin, where both of us are, you're in Minnesota or Iowa or Missouri or wherever you are.
Backcountryhunters.org. Sure, you can Google backcountry hunters and anglers as well, and it'll bring you to the same place. But backcountryhunters.org bring you everything you need to know. You can click on your state that you want to look into, and there's state specific info on there. And there's usually some sort of promotion going for anyone that wants to join or renew a membership. Can't remember off the top of my head what it'll be this month, but there's usually some free shit that you can get entered
A
into
hat or a
winning.
knife or an entry into a
Yeah,
trip, or yeah, I mean, every organization does those sort of things, and all that's done by donation from other companies that donate the product or donate these things that then you guys can use to help, you know, draw interest and create membership and stuff. But, I think dollar for dollar, I mean, not bashing the organizations. I think dollar for dollar, the money put to backcountry hunters and anglers, I think goes farther for everyone because of the fact that it's public land and it's no matter how you recreate on it. It's not species specific or sport specific. And that's what I love about your organization. And that's why I kind of feel I hate that I have the feeling that it's not as prevalent and known about as all the other ones. Not just that the other ones have had they've had louder voices for longer, but I mean, when I see something that's important, I want to help give you the mic and give a space to create that voice. So I'm glad you agreed
Yeah,
to jump on and hang out and chat at camp and whatnot.
we appreciate it because we don't have millions of dollars to spend on PR campaigns and whatnot. And at the end of the day, we're all just normal people trying to do what we care about.
How do you put your
That
pants on, Alec?
backwards usually, and then my fiance has to remind me you pee out of that side, right? Um, but
Yeah, we all put our pants
it's
on
a
the same way.
struggle.
One leg, then the other leg. Unless you only have one, then you figure it out from there.
Yeah, but yeah, we're all just people around the campfire, right?
Yeah, that's
That's
just
all it
it.
is.
That's it. Well, thanks again, Alec. Again, you want to check out more info? Easiest way, again, just Google up Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. Again, also, if you want a chance to come out, get involved, and meet some people and whatnot, don't forget Foam Fest, Horicon Marsh Archers. That's coming up here in just a couple of weeks. Of course, that's with the Okayest Hunter, and a lot of that whole gang, Greg and Matt and Eric and Derek, and the whole crew is going to be there. They're going to give away a whole bunch of stuff from all of their sponsors. You can try out some mobile stuff. Like I said, my plan is to be there and bring, my saddle and sticks and my like mobile stand and sticks, and we're going to give people chances to try out some stuff and take a look at it. So if you want to come out, Foam Fest going to be awesome. Backcountry Hunters and Anglers going to be part of that. It's getting late. We got to wrap this up. So
I
thanks as
appreciate
always,
it, Sean.
Alec. Anything else you want to wrap it up?
I'll see you guys at Foam Fest.
All right. Sounds good. We'll eat an